Hi friends, my name's Emma and let's talk spooky stuff. Welcome back to my channel. Guess what? There is a new Netflix original horror movie. It is a horror thriller drama and it's called Choose or Die. And today we're going to check it out and see whether it's worth your time. And if you do want to watch along with me, I'll let you know when to pause. I would love if you did that. This one is quite interesting. As most of you know, I like to go in pretty blind. I sometimes scroll through the trailer, but I never really watch it in full. I know this one is about a young broke coder who fires up an 80s survival horror game. But when they dig in, they discover they have unleashed a hidden curse that tears reality apart. And this one is directed by Toby Meekins. Toby is an editor, a writer, director, and producer. But in terms of directing, this is his first feature film. He has done one other segment on a horror TV show anthology that was called Bite-Sized Horror. That was from 2017. And he's done a bunch of shorts. So it seems like he's into horror, which I like, obviously. It's just so nice when directors don't try and cheap out and do a horror movie for their first film, but they're actually into the genre anyway. So interesting. But what I find more intriguing is Robert Englund is in this film starring as himself. I saw that on the cast list and I thought that was very strange. He pops up everywhere these days. But my biggest question is around what subgenre this horror movie falls into, because with the name Choose or Die and what we already know about the plot, it could be just based on mind-bending content. It could be, you know, reality, Matrix, all that good stuff, Black Mirror. But with Choose or Die, I really feel like it could be a would you rather, truth or dare kind of situation. And I'm hoping it is because I really love those films where you choose. But I guess, you know, Bandersnatch is like the perfect in-between where it is a choose your own adventure, but it's Black Mirror, mind-bending, reality tech stuff. So maybe this one will align with that and have elements of both of those things. But of course, there's only one way to find out. It's to go and watch the damn thing. So I'm going to shut my trap and we're going to go upstairs. Gromit's with me and we're gonna go check it out. Let's go. I'm sitting on this side. When you have to fight your pet to get a seat on the couch. I'm sitting here. Come here. Oh, okay. It's gonna be like that. I have two things that I want to say quickly before we start. Yes, I did get this film early. That's why I'm able to watch it just before it comes out, and that's why this video is on time. And two, yes, I always put on pants just for these videos. You're welcome. That's why you can always see just from there up. Anyway, let's get into it. I'm very excited. Let's check out Choose or Die. Pause now. That was really surprising. I really did not know what to expect. Well, I kind of had an idea, and I think I was spot on with Black Mirror, but that was really interesting for a Netflix original. I guess my first impressions, I would definitely say you do need to check this one out. I don't think it's a perfect film by any means, but I think what they aimed for, the setting, the casting, is super original for a Netflix original, but just super original right now. It felt really different, even though parts of the story feels like, I mean, like everything, like we've kind of gone through it before, the setting felt skewed in a different direction. And I think it has a lot to do with stylization, but let's start at the start. So this film isn't just about one person. It's actually about two people, two tech heads who kind of team up to try out this 80s survivalist horror game that they found that has a big cash prize. So working together with both their skill sets, hopefully they can achieve something. Unfortunately, so it's a man and a woman, and unfortunately the woman gets herself in quite deep with it. It's got some really interesting subtext because it talks a lot about the 80s, obviously. And they have this really, it's like a really endearing friendship relationship going on. between them. The chemistry is really good. He's all for the 80s and she's like, fuck the 80s. And it's a really interesting dynamic going on with the 80s video game. But also because it's a horror movie, that's obviously something that a lot of horror fans talk about a lot. And a lot of people are really into the 80s aesthetic. I mean, just 80s, the decade for horror movies. So I thought that's really interesting for a modern movie to take on. What I'm talking about with the stylization that I find quite interesting is it isn't really cohesive, or it's also not really cashing in fully to the 80s aesthetic. Sure, at some points it really goes there, but it's just not fully stylized. I thought it was going to be really bright and just cheesy. And although the video game aspects can be like that, it's not like that at all in other parts. I thought that that would make it more upbeat, fast, you know, kind of like a cheesy horror movie, but it's quite slow in sections and more drawn out like a mystery, which I thought was really interesting and just really different. I feel like so many aspects of this film are just so different for what subgenre I was trying to fit it into, but it does really lend itself to the kind of puzzle choose subgenre, and also the bending, the mind bending. So it, you know, it marries them, which is exactly what Black Mirror does. So in part, I mean, I'm going to say it, it does feel like a Black Mirror episode, and it's actually quite short. And this is something you probably never hear me say. I felt like it was too short. It was about an hour and 25 minutes, and I felt like I could have watched a little bit more. They really condense it all. And that's something I kind of like about the film, is it's a thinker because it gives you so much information, and it's really just taking you through all of the different aspects, the origin of the game, how they play it, all those kind of things without fully explaining it to you. They do obviously explain these aspects, but not in a kind of step-by-step process, in a process that tech heads would get and, you know, coding experts. So you kind of have to pick up, for me, I have to pick up the gist of a lot of it. But I liked that, and I liked thinking about what they were explaining in their terms. It felt real. And I think that that's another thing I liked about this film, because it didn't go fully into that stylization of the 80s. It did feel like it blended into real world and reality. And a lot of these films that feel like they bend those kind of, or blend those two things together, sometimes it doesn't feel real because it's a movie, but it's quite a raw and dark story, which felt more realistic, I guess. Also, I really loved the lead. She had a really interesting background, and like it's all woven into the story. It's really dark where they go with her, but she's also not the stereotypical lead, and there is something really enticing about that because she's so introverted and shy, and she's really tough from the start. This isn't something that she, you know, her character arc where she goes through something and turns into a tough woman. She's that from the get-go, and I like that. Nothing really changed about her in the story. I liked that. It was kind of like, obviously she's flawed, every human's flawed, but it wasn't a story about her gaining strength from anything, which just kept me on my toes the whole time. The film is really dark. It's so interesting because you keep going, like it's this juxtapose between seeing these 80s game moments and then just some real traumatic stuff comes up. And it's very strange to be watching and going, wow, they're really going there. And it is very gory, lots of blood. I winced a couple of times. I was very surprised, pleasantly surprised. But of course, with the good, there comes the bad. But I mean, I just feel like with all of the goodness of this film, I just wish it was a little bit longer. It could have used some more heightened moments, some peaks. And yeah, just really gone through. Maybe it's better it wasn't overproduced and it's not trying to manipulate the audience with sadness and really over explaining things and exaggerating the characters. But at the end, I really felt like I could have seen some more, and there's just more to explore, really. A good example as well with the stylization differences in this film is the music, because the music was, well, not really all over the place, but it was just so drastic, the shifts. So it went from having this like pop alternative, you know, like music you would hear on the radios these days, to complete silence in other scenes. And I'm talking about the music that had lyrics in it. It was music you'd hear every day. Going from that, of course, they have sound beds and Atmos and all of that stuff, and a little bit of instrumental, but I felt like a lot of it, all of the serious moments were in complete silence, and it's almost deafening silence because of how playful the other parts are. So it really does take you in and out of reality and this world or this game they're in. Also, something else I found strange was because the lead was so realistic, she was such a well thought out character, very different for horror movies. The villain in this, it's not like a stereotypical villain, but one of the villains in this, or one of the bad guys, I probably shouldn't call him a villain, but I don't really know what else to call him without giving too much away. He was a very strange character. And again, I just wish they kind of gave us one or two more scenes that gave context around who he was. But it's just very interesting because the film does play a lot with darkness and light, or like good and evil, and there's just a lot of loose ends, but it's a thinker movie, so I believe those loose ends are intentional for you to kind of come to your own conclusions. I feel like there's more moral dilemmas in this film than first meets the eye. I think it's layered. You can look at it as a simple video game, choose your adventure type film, choose your disaster type film, or you can look at all the subtext, and I just think there's a lot to analyze. So for all of that, I don't think it's a perfect movie at all, but it gave me a lot to chew. There was a lot going on, and I was really impressed with the gore. The gore level was something I haven't seen really for Netflix originals, so for that, I'm very impressed. Personal score, I'd probably still give it, I go between a 6 and a 7. There was parts I was fully for a 7, but if I do sink down to a 6 at one point, I kind of think that I probably shouldn't round up, but it would be a 6.5. It's a 6 for me. I still think it's definitely worth your time. I was just really shocked because it had so many different elements than I was expecting it to have. I was expecting it to be very stereotypical, and it proved me wrong with many elements. For scare, I'm going to give it a 7 just for the gore, and there's just some really disturbing play on trauma in this one, so be ready for that. And originality, I will give it a 6, which I think is a good score for a film that we've seen this kind of storyline again and again. But in this one, it's the same story, but the setting is so different that I find it quite interesting. Anyway, I would recommend checking out Choose or Die. Who knew that was going to happen on Netflix? If you're looking for something to watch this long weekend, depending where you are in the world and depending if you have a long weekend, but within the next couple weeks, I think you should put it on your to watch list and let me know what you think of it. Let me know down below what your personal score is, what your scare score is, and what your originality score is. Let me know if you watched along with me. And if you haven't seen it yet, let me know if you're excited for this one. If you're into video games and you're into 80s, check it out. And by the way, Robert Englund, it's a really interesting role for him, but it is brought up at the very start that he is in this. So don't worry, that was not a spoiler. I would never keep something in this video that's a spoiler after the fact of editing it, so you're safe. I just think that's a really cool play on him to be in this. Anyway, you'll see. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, I do 2 videos every single week talking about horror movies, and I'd love to have you here. I'm just here to give you more recommendations, and if I've helped out today with that, please give me a thumbs up, and I'll talk to you all very soon. Stay safe and stay spooky. Bye, friends.